You're listening to the Para House Entertainment Network. Come join us as we take you deep into the fire to the paranormal realms of hauntings, UFOs, ETs, alien abductions, strange creatures, and the vastness of universal consciousness as we continue to seek what is not supposed to exist as we search for the truth that only comes from going into the fire. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Into the Fire on this fine Tuesday night. And we're at a new location. We're on YouTube right now, streaming live. And welcome to everyone there. Billy is also going to try to stream it to Facebook at the same time, and we'll see how that goes. So we are dealing with my own thing from posting something in a Facebook Messenger that seems to have got me banned for life on Facebook.
Father Casey said he told you to keep your clothes on.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. That's exactly it. That's it.
Hi, Sherry. Mwah, mwah, mwah.
Yeah, but hey, we're going to have a super show tonight. We're going to be talking Bigfoot, and you know how we all love Bigfoot. Our special guest tonight is Todd Neiss, and I'll be bringing him on in just a second. And I'm going to read a quick little part of his bio. He sent me just a great bio. And, this is a gentleman who has been doing it for years and years. And over the years, his research has garnered him international attention. He has been the subject of numerous documentaries and TV programs from the U.S., Canada, and the U.K., and Germany. He has been featured on such programs as Unsolved Mysteries, Encounters, To the Ends of the Earth, The Unexpected, and he is featured on the Discovery Channel, Travel Channel, and National Geographic. He has also appeared on numerous radio shows, TV, talk shows, local newscasts, and newspapers, and he is currently producing a documentary about his recent expedition in the uninhabited Broth Archipelago of British Columbia, and I'm sure he'll correct me on that one, called Operation Sea Monkey. Completed on October 1st, 2016. So let's bring him on the air, and we will go from there. Todd, how are you doing tonight? Great to have you on.
Oh, it's an honor to be on here. Thank you very much.
The honor is all ours.
But just to correct you, not to be, it was a Broughton Archipelago, which is a chain of about 100 islands between the mainland of British Columbia and Vancouver Island up toward the northern end. And it was a fantastic journey. We can get into that a little bit later. But
oh, yeah, we'd love to.
I'm a little afraid of going into the fire. It sounds... well, I have to tell you, about 2 weeks ago, I was in a show called Into the Pit. So between Into the Pit and Into the Fire, I think I'm on the wrong highway.
Right, there you go.
What did I do? Right?
Yeah. Well,
anyway.
We like to. I don't know why I came up with the Into the Far type thing. I guess it's because of the way I say far from being from West Virginia.
There you go.
Yeah, everybody goes, "Oh my gosh!"
Yeah. And the pit was already taken. So
yeah, exactly. But no, this is just a great honor to have you on here tonight. Billy and I have gone through everything, and man, I am a big fanatic about Bigfoot. I just done a lot of expeditions myself, going through them and everything else. You're more on the west coast, are you not?
Well, yeah, I live in the Pacific Northwest, but my investigations have taken me obviously from California through Oregon, Washington, British Columbia, and even Alaska not too long ago. But I've also ventured out a little bit your way. I did a little bit in Arizona up in the Matsitsal National Forest, and most recently in Nebraska, of all places. So I'm getting there. I'm working
There
my
you
way
go.
in.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, when we have, I'm kind of in the belief that there are different species of Bigfoot, and some of them are pretty calm, and some of them are pretty aggressive. What do you think about that?
Well, I think just as much as humans are different, they are as well. I think they are probably an ancient relic hominid that has been able to survive where Neanderthal and Cro-Magnon, the Denisovans, have faded out. I think, you know, nature is survival of the strongest, and you either adapt or you go away. And I don't know what's a more fit uh, species than this. So yeah, in doing research into Native American lore, First Nations uh, lore, it's interesting to find that they, you know, of course they talk about the coyote and the raven and the turtle and all these different things, and they describe them in depth. But it's interesting when it comes to these beings, if you will, that they refer to them as the old ones or the first ones, as if they're another tribe, just
Right.
an ancient tribe that were here on site when they migrated into North America. And as far as different species are concerned, I don't know if there's so much different species as they are subspecies of each other.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we've got the skunk ape there in Florida. You got Momo in Missouri. You've got the folk monster in Arkansas, and so on. So um, I think they're related, albeit they might be a little different. But I mean, so are we. I mean,
Right.
and as far as they're being aggressive, you know, humans have bad people, and we have good people, and
Yes.
even a good person can have a bad day, or under certain circumstances could find themselves in a position to be defensive or what have you.
Right. I mean, it's
So
fight or flight.
exactly,
Yeah.
and in the case of these things, I'd just soon fight than fight. But anyway, I've gotten a little too close to them on one occasion, and they let me know about it. So
I've been the same way. The rocks start coming, and then trees or whatever else they've got near you, and then I
oh,
actually
I've had trees knocked to the ground. I've of course heard the tree knocks and whatnot, but I got roared at one back in 1998. I don't mean to interrupt, but I just something I
oh
can't
well,
get out of
that's
my head is in 1998 I had an expedition I organized at the base of the south side of Saddle Mountain, which wasn't far from where I had my sighting in '93. So here we are 5 years later, and I was fortunate enough to have on my team Peter Byrne and Ron Moorhead. You may know those people,
I do know those
and
names.
Ron had flown his plane in, and we had hoped to use it for aerial reconnaissance, but the weather was just so crappy that time of year. It was on the verge of snowing, and we had hailstorms moving in and out. And so I think it was on about day 6. Ron was getting kind of sick of it, and he says, "You know, we got a little break in the weather. I'd like to try to get out on visual flight rules, even though he's instrument rated." He just said, "It's, you know, I just like to get out while the weather's breaking." So Peter ended up taking Ron back to Seaside, which is where the closest airport was. So I knew I had a few hours to kill.
Hmm.
And I was in placing these seismic ground sensors. They actually detect vibration in the ground, send
Right.
a silent signal to our receivers at the base camp. and that way we can train our attention in that direction. And so I had a kit of 8 of these things. I had been loaned from the North American Science Institute, NASI, and I had yet to put theirs in the ground. I have a set of 4 I had already in place, but I thought, this would be a good time. While Ron and Peter are gone, I'll just go up above the base camp and, just kind of do a picket line formation with them so that nothing could come down off that mountain without us knowing about it. And while I was there, this hailstorm came in, and I realized I probably couldn't make it back down to base camp, but I could make it up into the old growth.
Mhm.
So I thought I'd get up under these big old, 300-year-old fir trees and use them for an umbrella. And I had to, I had to take a pee. There's no other way to put it. And so while I did that, and I was just buckling up my belt buckle when something from about my 10 o'clock just let out this ear-splitting roar. I call it a roaring bark because it was like 3 seconds of maybe 120 decibels. It was very close. I estimate less than 80 feet away. But I call it a roaring bark because it did this after this, MGM lion sort of roar. It kind of ended in this kind of guttural at the end of it, which I've not heard before. I have heard since, by the way, but I can't tell you guys how the level of fear that I felt when that happened, because that son of a bitch wouldn't come out from behind this hedge, but he let himself be known. And I really believe in the long run that it had something to do with me marking his territory. And I've heard about, I don't know, 5 or 6 different accounts from other people where they had a similar reaction when they were answering the call of nature. But in terms of fear, I really, I don't ever want to go there again. And I've jumped out of perfectly good working airplanes, and I've scuba dived with sharks and summited mountains and been shot at by rockets and missiles and gunfire in Iraq. And I don't ever recall being put into a position where I ever felt so hopeless. I couldn't move as much as I wanted to. I wanted to run, but something a little more primal inside me said, "You want to survive? Don't.
I know that exact feeling.
Don't move a muscle." And so I didn't, and I couldn't for like 2 minutes. I was just like, I always thought that saying, being paralyzed with fear was some kind of a euphemism, but that day I experienced it firsthand. So I guess I'd say, be careful what you ask for. A lot of people say, "Oh, all they want to do is get out there and see one of these things," and they think that's the end of it. And I'm here to tell you that's the beginning. And you better stop fantasizing to that point where you get your little, selfie with Bigfoot, and really focus on the potential that might follow, and, kind of think out these scenarios and what you do, because most people I know that have had encounters, number one, they weren't looking for them. Number two, they were not prepared, nor was I, to be honest with you. So bad on me. But nowadays, I go in with a lot more open mind, and I have a game plan, if such a thing should happen again. But anyway, I digress.
I know
You said,
that
was it Billy? You said you had a similar experience?
I went from I wanted to believe to full on believe about 25 years ago. It was probably 12 o'clock at night. I was driving down the road here. I live right on the Kentucky-Tennessee state line. I'm right here at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, 101st. Driving down the road, and there's this Red River, small little river, I call it a creek because we swam in it all the time.
Mhm.
But I came down around the curb, and just at the end of the bridge, where the guardrails and the bridge meets,
Right.
flat ground,
The abutment.
I saw, I don't, it had to be Bigfoot. We don't have bears around here in this general area. Every once in a while, about every 20 years, you might hear of a black bear coming into the territory, but this was so much bigger. And it was squatted down. It had its back to me. And I swear it had to be 3.5 feet wide, 3.5 to 4 feet wide. And it was taller than my truck.
Jeez.
And it was squatted. I didn't get the frontal. I got the backside. But
Wow.
like you said, my heart stopped. And everything in me, I knew what I was looking at, but everything in me said, keep going. And that's what I did. And there were multiple cars that did the same thing, coming at me and going. But it was on my side of the bridge, right at the edge, like he had gotten caught just before he was getting ready to go over. So, yeah, I became a full-on believer at that point.
Yeah. Well, my baptism, if you will, into Bigfooting was very abrupt, similar to what you experienced. And I hadn't really been a believer at all. I mean, growing up in the Pacific Northwest, of course, you hear the stories, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, and all that. But I'd always kind of relegated it to, a fun little campfire story to
It was huge.
scare the crap out of
And it was
kids.
black. It was black.
Yeah. As were the three I saw back in '93. But prior to that, like I say, I never picked up a book on the subject. I never watched any TV programs about the subject, and it just really wasn't on my radar until April 3rd, 1993.
Yep. And interestingly enough, right there where bears at in Franklin, Kentucky, we've got a location that's known for the trifecta. We get whoops out there. Whoops, tree knocks. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, I was treated to a very interesting set of whoops, if you will. It wasn't the first time I'd heard them, but when I was invited to a reservation in Nebraska, I had been communicating with this guy for a couple of years, and I'd seen some of his videos too, shot in pitch black darkness, and I'm just like, he's showing these like lights in the darkness and stuff, and I'm like, okay, that's, I try to stay, biologically science focused, and not that I'm a scientist by any means, but you know what I mean. Just I don't buy into the woo, as they call it. Excuse me, so much, but it was just absolutely fascinating when I got out there. This was in October last year, and I hadn't really planned on going out in the field. To be honest with you, he had showed me a couple of photographs and videos that got my attention so much. I'm not at liberty to really go into detail about them, but just suffice to say, I got on the next plane out there. Got on the ground on a Saturday, met them Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday nights, and I flew out Saturday. But those 5 nights in a row, they took me out into their research area along the Missouri River. Real heavy rolling hills, real heavy hardwoods, oak and maple and such. And we didn't get out there till midnight every night. We intentionally held off until right around midnight. Very desolate, road. I mean, you could hear traffic coming from a long ways away, and frankly, there was no place for everybody to even park. We kind of had this only little spot there, but we get out there, and my friend shuts off all the lights, and he says, walk across this road with me. And I'm not kidding you, we were literally standing on the fog line when he started calling out to them in his native language. He would say, "Aho, Kage, which means hello, friend. And he'd wait for a minute, and then all of a sudden, I swear to God, and I still trying to wrap my head around it, but all of a sudden, there's a pair of eyes light up out there. No, not like reflecting off our flashlight or headlights or nothing, just pitch black. Two sets, a set of eyes just comes on, and then he would talk to them mainly in English and whatnot, but he had these, key phrases. He would say, once they started showing up, he would say, gigaho, which meant come closer. And I'll be damned if these sets of eyes, sometimes three at a time, you get one or at least one of them would start coming up. And it was fascinating. And I'm like looking at this going, I mean, my head's swimming. I'm trying to think of any logical explanation for bioluminescence being generated by a biped because there's no history of it. So, and if you think about it, it's almost uh, it seems self-defeating if you have night vision that your eyes are emitting light because I mean, to me, I'm looking at this going, oh, that would just blind you, really. But I've got a couple theories I'm working on, which might account for that. But again, if it weren't for the vocalizations, and in one case, a very, very distinct rapid fire tree knock of the type I've never heard, um, I would question whether this was Bigfoot related. But these vocalizations, you talk about the whoops. Oh my God! I mean, I've never heard such a variety of vocalizations that I did in those 5 nights. Technically, I guess it was daytime, but it was dark.
I've always heard that they are like crazy good at mimicking things. I mean,
I've heard that too. I mean,
now when you heard the growl or whatever, the roar or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Did it put it out like a infrasound, kind of like
How do
they
I
say
know?
tigers do?
I mean, how do I know? I mean, whales do it. Other animals, tigers do it. Elephants can do it. But it's below human, supposedly below human, at least auditory recognition. However, that doesn't mean it's below human um, physical reaction.
Right.
And I've heard that before. I don't know. I'd say from the range of sounds I've heard, from the roars to the whoops to the I mean, they're all over the place language wise. One particular thing that got my attention when we were out there was the first night we got out there. We had this. I can only assume it was a female. We had this creature just do this high pitched wailing, but it had a rhythm to it. It had certain tones to it, and it would go on for like 5 seconds, and then it would take like a 5 to 10 second break, and then it would do it all over again. And I swear to God, guys, it sounded like music. It sounded like a song,
Like
and it was beautiful. It was really beautiful. I wish I had it recorded because I'm listening to this because you're never ready for it when it happens, and then it's like,
exactly.
okay, she did this 4 times in a row the first day we got there. And she did it again 2 days later in broad daylight when I went out there. One thing I did bring with me was a digital tape recorder. And I thought for sure I was going to get them on tape, not during the daylight. I assumed they were, if they're active at, midnight to 3 in the morning, I'm thinking they're, down for the count during the day. Oh, hell no. I go to set up this recorder. And just as soon as I stood up, here she comes again. And she only did 1 verse this time, but it was exactly like it was those four little choruses she did 2 days earlier. But the whoop thing, I got to tell you, my buddy, he's very religious, and in fact, he's into his native uh, culture, of course, but he's a converted Jehovah's Witness, not Jehovah, excuse me, Latter Day Saint Mormon, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, he's always quoting scripture, and everywhere we went, we always prayed before meals and whatnot. I mean, guy's a very solid Christian. And I think it was on a Wednesday, we weren't getting a lot of activity. And he says, you know what, I'm going to try something. I haven't done this in a long time, but I'm going to try something. Sometimes this works. He says, I'm going to pray with him. And so he goes, oh, Kage, listen, I want to invite you to pray with me. I'm going to speak to our Creator, and I'm going to pray for your health and your safety, for you and your family. And if you want to come forward, please. And this is pitch black. Again, you got to just close your eyes, because it would have been bright. You just closing your eyes, it'd be brighter than what it was there. I've never been in such blackness. And he says, come forward if you want, gigaho, and I'll pray with you. So he bows his head, I bow my head. He goes into his prayer, which was, mostly English. And it was maybe 3 minutes long, but about a minute and a half into it, I swear to God, and this was from very close range. And you might recognize this, Billy, but I heard, I'm going to imitate it once, and my wife's going to hear it upstairs and go, "You did it again, didn't you?" But I'm going to do it. But this thing, I'm serious. We got our head bowed. He's doing his little prayer, and all of a sudden we got,
sound familiar, Bear?
Oh, it sure does.
It did that,
familiar.
but like 10 times as loud, right? And it's like maybe 60 feet out into the dark in front of us. It did that 4 times in less than 10 seconds. And I just kept my head down. I'm like, oh, shit. And my friend finished his prayer, and so I'm like, wait, I'm like, say amen. And he finally did it. Just like, I go, dude, was that them? He goes, yep, that's them. He said, I told you it might work. And we get the eye glow and all that. And we've actually got eye glow. We had another night where we were getting some response, but not as much as he'd like. He says, I want to take you to another area. It's about 4 miles from here, out in the pucker brush. We call it Hard Knocks because we get a lot of knocking out there. It's just a name we gave to it. And so I'm driving a rental car, and this guy's taking me four-wheeling, like a Nissan Sentra. I'm like, no, I got to turn this thing in, man. But we're going through grass higher than the hood of the car, and I can't even see the road. And he's like going left. I'm like, I'm still on the road. But he took us into this place, and I mean, we're out, and nobody's been down that road, because you'd be able to see the trail through the grass. And we finally get out there. We literally park on the road, turn off the lights, and we're standing there. He does his little calls out to him. And it probably took all about 30 seconds. And all of a sudden, straight down the road in front of us, boom, these 2 eyes light up. I'm like, holy crap. We're 4 miles from the other place. And we only went there that one night. But I mean, 5 nights in a row, 2 different locations. I'd love to take you guys there, because I'm telling you, if I can go there 5 nights in a row and get that reaction, I can guarantee you it's happening on a very, very regular basis. Now, it might require my friend to be there just because I think he's established a relationship with him. But I'll tell you what, it got kind of funny, because by this time I was getting a little frustrated, if you will. Like I said, I'm having trouble wrapping my head around this. I'm like, Todd, you got to come up with some freaking scientific reason for why these things are doing that, or
Let me ask you this: do you think they can sense your intent?
I don't know. Can you sense people's intent on the street sometimes? I mean,
yeah,
complete strangers, and I would think if you're as primal as they are, it's probably a little bit modified, amplified, if you will, and yeah, I mean, Animals don't come up to us for a reason. I
Right.
just spent the last 2 weeks trying to train some squirrels to take peanuts out of my hand, and they're still like, no.
Yeah.
But in nature, most animals see humans as a threat. So if
We
you
see
could get
ourselves as threats.
right, but I'm saying there again that there are good people, bad people, different situations, different scenarios, but these things seem to have an interest, at least in my friend, uh, and I was kind of along for the ride. But I gotta tell you, when we got out to Hard Knocks, I'm getting frustrated. I'm like, I got to find some answers here, and it really took a little cojones. But I looked at it and I said, this full blooded Indian, and I'm like going, and he's been experiencing this for a long time ago. Have you ever tried just walking up to him? He looked at me like I just ate a retard sandwich. And he goes,
Would you
no.
turn him all into a gator pit?
And
Yeah.
I'm like, hold my beer, dude. And he's like, what? And I said,
Oh wow!
I'm going for it. No flashlights, nothing. The only light I had was those two eyeballs,
Looking at you.
maybe 100 feet away. And I just started walking. It's fall. It's October, so all the leaves are crunching under my feet. Nobody's following me. Thank you very much. They're just watching, and I got about halfway there, and those eyes just blinked out. And I was kind of happy, I guess. But yeah. Meanwhile, they discovered another one, came around, tried to flank us at our 3 o'clock. But yeah, I decided to bite the bullet. I'm getting tired of this crap, and I'm getting more used to these things, where I want to make contact. I want
Yeah.
it can't be just one way, and that's what it seems to be. They're coming up on us. They're checking us out. They're observing us. They're getting what they want. I want what I want, and I want to hook up. I want to make it. I think there's got to be a way to do it, and yeah, there's a risk involved, but
A big risk.
Well, Todd, I've got the first question of the night. Frankie Lynn, I saw it.
yeah, go ahead.
What is your theory on as to why the skeletal remains haven't been found? Do you think they're interdimensional or earthbound creatures?
Wow, that's a loaded question. So I'll start off with the last question and work my way back. I think they are biological. A biological species. Again, I think they are ancient humanoid or hominid species, I should say. Not human, but hominid. But yeah, I think they're flesh and blood. But I think under the circumstances where where they live, and the environment they're in, and the life they must lead, that they have developed some very special skill sets. Very intuitive, very. I think they're very social, but I think they're very curious too, and I think that was pretty evident back in 1993 when I was out with the Army conducting explosives training in the Oregon coast.
Mm-hmm.
And we had 3 different gravel quarries we were blasting at, and we put up, 2,000 foot high mushroom clouds. This was like several hundred pounds of explosives, different types of explosives. And when I saw them coming down from just lighting the fuses on the 3rd site, we're convoying, down to our staging area to wait for the explosion. As a passenger behind the driver of a Humvee, it was a nice day. I had the window rolled down or unzipped, I should say, and I'm looking out like I always did, because I hunted that area quite a bit for deer and elk, and so I'm just looking for wildlife, And we come around this corner, and it was the second rock quarry that came into view, and this was less than an hour after he just blew the hell out of it, and here are these 3 figures standing right in the quarry, right where we had detonated these charges. I mean, there were still craters in the ground. And a lot of people ask me, oh, that doesn't make sense. I mean, any animal, a deer, or elk, or a squirrel, raccoon, skunk, whatever, is going to go, 190, 180 degrees the opposite direction of these big mushroom clouds and the ground shaking and all. Yet they didn't do that. They didn't do that. And I have to ask myself why. When every other terrestrial animal that we know about they'd vacate that area, for hours, if not days, before they felt comfortable coming back. And it just struck me that they were checking us out. What's that tell you? They were curious. And for something to have a level of curiosity that it is strong enough to overwhelm an innate fear that any other animal would have, that tells me one thing. That tells me intelligence. Now you might think the opposite, but no, I'm thinking curiosity isn't something most animals out there have. I mean, they have a very, almost pre-programmed eat, sleep, procreate,
And
repeat,
yeah,
wash, rinse, repeat.
repeat, and
It,
they also always don't want to be seen.
true,
Yeah,
true.
yeah, they don't want to be noticed at all. They hide all during the day. They prefer not to be found. And this, when you're curious like that, it does suggest that it is a higher IQ of anything, of any animal or thing that we would be involved in.
It says, I want to know.
Exactly.
I need answers. And fear be damned, I'm going to get them. And these might have been scouts, that were, maybe that's their position, that the three of them said, we'll be back. We're going to go check out what just happened. I don't know.
I gotta tell you, when I read your first experience, how all that went down, I was just blown away. I mean,
No pun intended.
no, yeah, well, there you go.
Yeah.
And you said that the one in the middle was
Yeah.
taller than the two on each side.
Yes, that is true. Yeah, the one
And
in
at
the
the
middle.
time, you thought you were the only witness, correct?
Yes. Well, I certainly was the only witness in the vehicle I was in, because the driver, he's watching this. He's driving down this very narrow logging road, so he's focused on the road. And I don't know if you've ever been in the original Humvees, but they're like 8 freaking feet wide at least. So
Yeah.
the passenger in the other front seat wouldn't have been able to see down this embankment I was looking down anyway. But I remember they were just having a conversation, and I was minding my own business. And a lot of people go, "Oh, why didn't you say something?" I'm like, I was in shock. When I first saw these figures standing out there, black like what you'd seen. My first thought was, what the hell are those people doing down there? Because when we do these, especially these very dangerous uh, training missions, everybody's accounted for. You don't have people going around onesie twosies or threesies off on their own. It just doesn't happen. I've been in the military over 20 years. It doesn't happen. And but that whole what the heck are these people doing down there was pretty short lived, because as I'm watching them, like you mentioned, that one in the middle just stood there like a statue, and I estimated it to be about 9 feet tall. The other two on either side of it, to its left and right. Now, mind you, they're all looking in our direction across this ravine. They're watching our convoy. But the other two, easily 7.5 feet tall. These buggers were they were doing this rocking back and forth deal. They were like shifting weight from one foot to the other, and these long arms that extended well below their knees just were swinging, from side to side as they were doing this rocking thing. I just heard a story yesterday. I read a story that happened less than 10 miles from here. Same description.
Mhm.
They spotted, and I'm pretty sure I know where the trail is or where this guy was on, but he talked about seeing one. It was doing the same thing, this rocking back and forth thing. And while it's watching him, just doing this whole thing, I've heard about 10 different stories like that. I talked to a primatologist, Dr. Henner Fehrenbach,
Mhm.
who used to live up here, worked a primatologist, who told me that, as I described this behavior, he said that's very common with large primates, even chimpanzees. Go
Mhm.
to the zoo, rap on the glass or whatever. If they feel anxious or nervous, that's what they do. They just,
Yeah.
they're in your presence. They're kind of freaked out. You're probably more freaked out, but this is what they do. It's like, okay, am I gonna go left? Am I gonna go right? I don't know, but I've heard that description before. Um,
Now,
yeah,
We've actually had witnesses at this property that we are known to frequent quite a lot. And one of the things that they've said that they'll see them standing next to the woods, and the first thing they do, very large, long-armed creature, and they're just doing this, and their arms are actually
yeah,
swaying back and forth.
yeah.
Because when they get a look at you, and they are looking at you, the anxiety is a natural thing. And then, but that's the part where it bothers me some. What can that turn into? What are they thinking that may happen
Well,
if you move the wrong way or do the wrong
you
step?
know, it may be somewhat demonstrative on their part. They may be making a demonstration, like,
Yeah,
you know,
bowing up a little bit.
you
Yeah.
want some of this?
Yeah,
Where ain't
exactly. Yeah, bowing up and saying, come on, come walk over this way.
but seriously, getting back to Billy's question, I don't mean to
Hmm. No,
digress,
no,
but I
no problem at all.
want to finish it. You had mentioned where I thought I was the only witness to these things. The story didn't quite end there. We arrived at the staging area uh, maybe a minute later, and I just instinctively got out of my rig and ran back up in the direction that we came. There was the other two couple vehicles were still coming in behind us, and I wanted to see him again. I really, you know, after about a minute of trying to uh, take all this in, I just wanted to see him again.
Hmm.
Still do. I think I may have,
Okay.
but uh, while I'm standing there on my tiptoes, I didn't dare go too far where I was out of sight because again we have that rule, that procedure everybody's accounted for, and if you left the side of the main body, you'd be in deep shit. So excuse my language, but
You're
um,
fine.
okay. But anyway, while I'm standing there just trying to look over this damn hill that was blocking my vision, I heard somebody call my name, and I looked off to my right, and I noticed Sergeant Martin coming up to me, Jeff Martin. And I look, I go, yeah. And he goes, what you looking at? And I said, nothing. I dropped my arm to my side. He continued to come up to me. And I remember he was smoking on a cigarette, and he got right up to me, and he looked me in the eyes. He goes, I don't suppose you saw what I witnessed down at the second blast site. And I'm like, I don't know, Jeff. What did you see? And with that, he took a drag off his cigarette, and he looked around to make sure nobody else was in earshot. And he said, I saw three giant, hair covered, I don't know, dude, Bigfoot, I guess. And of course, at that, I'm like, yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
crazy.
No, I didn't think I was crazy, and even without Jeff's corroboration, I'd still be where I'm at today. But I can't unsee what I saw. But it was nice to know somebody else shared that experience, that trauma, if you will, that trauma to your psyche, everything that you've been told is supposed to be, and then something shows up that's not. You know, it's a wake up call, and so, but at that time, I was in the what you call traditional guardsman. I had a 9 to 5 job, as did the rest of us. And we just got together 1 week in a month and trained. So it would be early May, 30 days or so later, that we got back together again. And lo and behold, we had 2 more soldiers independently come forward and admit to seeing 3, same number, same description, blah. So that's, it kind of makes this encounter unique in that multiple animals aren't seen that very often. It's usually a single individual. Um, multiple eyewitnesses are fairly rare as well, and certainly multiple eyewitnesses of multiple animals. But then again, you add in the whole context of what we were doing there, really kind of sets it apart from any other, at least as far as I know, any other encounters. But I have to say, uh, it it just boggles my mind how those 25 seconds that where I viewed them for nearly half a minute, but how 25 seconds of my entire adult life, at that time I was 34, 25 seconds completely changed the direction of my entire life. Everything that's happened to me since somehow seems to be related to that 25 seconds.
Yeah.
It's just, it was it was an epiphany that completely unexpected, and it was such a traumatic jolt to my consciousness, I guess, that, and when I consider the how rare it is, and how really fortunate I was to have had that sighting, I can't help but ask myself, why me? And so it's been really 28 years in really trying to find a real purpose for why me, and that's why I founded the American Primate Conservancy, is because I've decided that what really needs to be done, I don't believe they exist. In fact, I started a conference with that, and about here a pin drop. I said, "Hi, my name's Todd, and I don't believe Bigfoot exists." And they're like, then I just followed it with, "I know they do." And so I guess I'm in a little special category in that way. But no, it's knowing that they exist. Now what? I mean, why? And where do we go from here? And for me, it's my goal, knowing that they exist and knowing how really wonderful they are. I think they're magnificent creatures, as rare as they are. They're probably not as rare as most people think, but I just have found that we need to ultimately protect them. Now, a lot of people argue, well, they don't need to protect them. They've been here for 50,000 years, a million years, whatever. They're doing just fine. Well, I thought so as well, but the more I thought about it, it's like, if you cannot tell me with a fairly accurate guess what the population of this species is today, then don't talk to me.
Right.
And tell me that they're okay. And if you can't tell me what their population was even 100 years ago compared to today, then you have no leg to stand on to just say, oh, they're fine. I mean, we could be talking about some exotic new species of frog. It shouldn't matter. Animals are animals. Okay. Yeah, these are, a little different, but they shouldn't be. I should be able to write a scientific paper on Bigfoot and go through and redact the name Bigfoot and put in silver spotted butterfly, and it should read just as
It's the
fluid.
same.
Exactly.
I
But
agree
we
with you.
tend to romanticize these things. We tend to personify these things because they look so much like us. I
Mhm.
get it. And then you got
Yeah.
commercial. Then you got they're totally exploited commercially, from Jack Link's beef
to
jerky
yeah.
to
And I got named Daryl.
Bigfoot tires, whatever. I mean, Bigfoot.
Right.
I mean, even T-Mobile did you know, it's cute, but
Good.
in exploiting them, they really do a disservice to these creatures because
Yeah.
they kind of tend to make fun of it, make mockery of it, and of course you've got other elements like hoaxers, which I really don't think make up even 1% of what's out there. They certainly do exist, but uh, and that's sad. But some
Yeah.
people have nothing better to do. But I just feel like I'd rather err on the side of caution. Should they be in jeopardy?
Hmm.
Okay. Do we know what sort of habitat they live in? Well, we got a pretty good idea. Do we know what sort of resources they need? What sort of natural resources? What kinds of foods? Is there something specific? Is there a plant that might be going extinct that they need a certain enzyme from? Skunk cabbage or something out there that either by our encroachment or climate change or whatever you have that some of their food sources are going away. What is the range of a single animal? What is and you can answer that if you can tell me what the daily caloric
Has to
intake
be.
is for an 800-pound Bigfoot.
Mhm.
uh
Yeah.
Truth of the matter is they're probably, from the time they get up until the time they lay down, they're probably nonstop grazers. Or I mean, they're I think Dr. Fehrenbach estimated that one of these creatures needed somewhere between 5,000 and 6,000 calories a day just to sustain itself.
Mhm.
He estimated the range for a single animal based upon. Now he extrapolated a lot of this from his expertise on primates, but he came up with about a 60 square mile range per animal based on the amount of food resources in the depending on the environment, of course. Now you think 60 square miles is a lot. Well, that's 10 by 30,
Yeah.
and they can travel that in a day.
Hmm.
Easy.
Yeah.
So
And the
anyway,
interesting thing there is you saw three together.
yeah.
Right.
That's right.
Exactly.
So what's the calorie intake there? I mean,
Well, yeah. If
are
you
they sharing
extrapolate that
it?
up,
Or,
well, if you got a clan, then yeah, their range is probably going to be 100 miles.
Right.
In all directions.
Right.
Sherry was asking what you thought their diet would be. Uh,
Oh, well, somebody asked me that just the other day, and it's a reasonable question, and there have been, so that your viewers know, that there have been eyewitness accounts where they've actually been seen foraging. I think, for example, up in British Columbia off the Fraser River, there was a gentleman I met up there in 1998 who was hunting bear, and he saw what looked like the back end of a bear sticking out of a forest of, I think it was aspen.
Hmm.
And he had his rifle on it, had a scope on it, and he's like, as soon as that thing, turns sideways, I'm going to take it. And instead of turning sideways, it stood up,
Yeah.
and it was grabbing these branches, bringing it down to its mouth, and just stripping all the leaves off, and then going for the next one. I believe that they're omnivore, that they eat both meat and plant, and there's a lot of resources around here. I live in the Mount Hood National Forest. I'm looking into the trees right out of my office. I can't see more than 20 feet, but within that forest is just uh, lots and lots of food. I've had bear on my property. I don't know how many times in the last 6 years, and I think their diet is fairly consistent with that of bear. You know, meaning that yeah, they move around based on diet like anything else. Um, Obviously, in the summer, you're going to have a much more varied cuisine when it comes to blueberries, huckleberries,
Blueberries.
salmonberries, blackberries, all that, mushrooms. At least 6 months out of the year. There's nuts out there. There's frogs and bird eggs and one particular case I thought was interesting. A gentleman that was fishing on uh, this creek called Cold Creek. It's a tributary to the Nehalem River on the Coast Range. And he walked up this path, and he'd been there before, and he knew it kind of goes along one side of the river, gets to a certain point, and there's this wooden bridge that goes across the creek, and then the trail continues up the other side. And he got by himself. He got out on the right to the center of this bridge over the creek, and he looks upstream about 100 yards. He sees what he thinks is a bear. And because it's all crouched down along the water, and he sees this thing focused on the water, and it's rolling these rocks around, and every once in a while bringing its hand up to its mouth. And then, as he's watching it, it did something bears can do. It started palming rocks like a basketball, lifting them up and setting them aside. And grabbing them and just setting, you got to have one of these guys here to do that. And bears just can't do that.
Right.
And so now he's got his attention. He's like, okay, that's not right. Well, about that time, this Bigfoot looked downstream in his direction and did what they, 99% of the time they do. As soon as they realize they've been spotted, they just casually get up and walk into the woods, and so that was that here. So he thought, and then a few minutes later, he got enough courage to walk up to where this thing was squatted down, and interestingly enough, the entire shoreline where it was squatted there was just littered with crawdad shells.
Yes.
And that's what it was doing. That's an easy meal. Just roll over rocks and grab those little red suckers, and
Yeah.
so that, that's one thing we know they eat. And when it comes to rivers, around here, I'm surrounded by two rivers. I got the Salmon River behind me, and I've got the Sandy River about a quarter mile that way. And we have 4 very deliberate, very regular, if you will, fish runs when it comes to salmon and steelhead. We'll have winter steelhead. We'll have spring chinook. We'll get some coho with that too, which are the king salmon. We'll have summer steelhead, and then we'll get a fall chinook season. And don't think for a minute that these guys don't have a natural built-in calendar. They know when that stuff's coming through. So just to wrap up, I think they are omnivorous. I think they are both predator and scavenger. I think they're opportunist. I think if under the right circumstances, if they had access to a dumpster, they'll chow down on that as well. But yeah, so they're going to move around to where their food resources are. When they know the fish are coming down the rivers, they're going to get down on the rivers. When they know the crawdads are hatching and they're going to be available, they're going to be there. In the winter, I think they'd probably revert more to a carnivorous diet, more your deer and elk and whatnot. But that again, it's speculation. But that's.
And think about this, people, y'all that are watching. If these things can chase down a freaking deer, don't think for 1 second they can't catch you.
Yeah, exactly.
No, that's it's funny you should say that, because I've known a couple of incidences, and it's pretty rare, where people have claimed to be chased by these things. The funny thing is, they never get caught. And I'm thinking, do you think for one moment if these big bastards wanted to take you down, they would? No, what you got was a very forceful escort out of their area. They might have
Right.
had offspring there, or they might have had a fresh
Too
kill.
close to home.
Right.
Mhm.
But we hear a lot about these things just pacing hunters and whatnot. And as soon as the hunter thinks he hears something, stops. About 2 seconds later, that sound stops,
That's mhm.
and then they get going. The one I just was talking about, I just read about yesterday. That was the exact same thing that happened. It was like I would stop, and then all of a sudden it'd get quiet, and I start going again, and all of a sudden I could hear it again. They're I don't know if that is necessarily escorting or just kind of checking you out. But when they charge you, like the investigation I did up on the Roaring River back in 2002, that was an obvious bluff charge.
Mhm.
Uh, it wasn't going to do anything as long as they were doing what it wanted them to do. And trust me, it was pretty effective.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Well, I think the throwing of a rock is effective enough for me and a tree. But I find it very interesting because all the things that you're saying is from around here, from our area. And I was raised in West Virginia. I've been looking for Bigfoot in West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee. And it's very interesting because I can occur with you on their diet because we have actually seen a large one with a deer slung over his shoulder, holding it with the 2 feet, and bending over a creek and eating crawdads.
Really? Wow.
Really? Yeah, actually, I've seen that. But
See, those are the kinds of things we need to
For a
document.
snack.
right, exactly. So
Kind of
they're
surf and turf.
right. Yeah, exactly. It is. It's totally surf and turf. But see that is the stuff that's important for everyone to know because you're starting to refine where they're getting their stuff from. I've always said that there don't seem to be too much of a berry eaters around here, but at the same time, when the season is, they're opportunists and
Yep.
perfect thing to do it. They also seem to like. I don't know if you have the garlic grass or the garlic onion that pops up forever. For some reason or other, they seem to like to feed on that where they find it.
Well, what's interesting is we have something I could correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure you have, but it's we call it skunk cabbage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've got it up here.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's got the yellow flowers and they're huge, like banana leaves when they're full grown,
Yeah.
which is right about now. Well, bears are known to eat it. It has a bulb like an onion.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a book on edible plants in this area for survival, and there's one page on the very back, and there's 2 plants they mention. They say these are edible, and they do have certain nutrients, but God help you, it better be the last thing you eat because skunk cabbage has what they call crystalline oxalate in it, and it's
Yeah.
extremely hard on the human digestive system. But I mean, if you were like life or death, you could eat it. But we know the bears eat it, and we found foot tracks, Bigfoot foot tracks, right in the mud next, because
Right by it.
the skunk cabbage grows in swamps because
Mm-hmm.
they actually filter the water and they clean the water. And I can imagine they pick up a lot of nutrients in the process, and they dig it, But
Yep.
so yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. Garlic or onion or anything like that would be appealing too.
Right. Yeah. It's so interesting, And I know that you mentioned about protecting them and everything else, and it upset me so much when I heard about this guy in Oklahoma wanting to open up a kill season for them. And I'm like going, what? You don't even know anything about this thing. And then he refers it more to us. Well, we need to find out more, so a body would be very important. And I have heard of witnesses that have been have shot at them before,
Mm.
and it seems like it does nothing to them.
Well, yeah.
And you're talking about tracks, and I have to ask you this too because of that. And we followed tracks before, and they just disappear out of nowhere in the middle of the snow, and you'll see a track, and then there's nothing else around, and you kind of go, where to go?
Well, I don't know. I've seen on several occasions a solitary track. I've also seen a series of tracks, but those solitary ones always baffle you. But
Yeah,
I don't think for a minute that these things aren't arboreal, if you will. I think they climb trees quite often, and
yes,
I think that's kind of a holdover. We hear Professor Jeff Meldrum talk about in studying the locomotion of the trackways, he's seeing this kind of a mid-tarsal break in the foot, which would be a throwback to our burial ancestors, the ability to use the feet to grasp limbs just like the
limbs.
hands.
Mhm.
So, if it happens anywhere near trees, I can only assume that they've just gone up the trees and they're
Yeah,
they're going that way. But now, when it comes to that, I remember that situation, and it was an Oklahoma congressman that was trying to put into effect a law or actually a bounty, if you will, on Bigfoot. And I've seen this stuff before. Yeah, I think it was just a publicity stunt, and it got him a lot of attention.
it did. Yes, it
But
did.
and it pissed a lot of people off. But I'll say this:
Me as one.
right. Well,
Yeah.
I don't think there was any real seriousness with regard to that. Back in the 70s here in the Pacific Northwest, Skamania County, Washington, actually put into effect a law against killing one. And it came with both a fine and potential jail sentence for doing so. And again, that might have been just publicity stunt, but it's stuck for the last 50 plus years. So mission accomplished. But I'll say that the mission statement for the American Primate Conservancy is this: it's the discovery, research, knowledge, recognition, and protection of the species known as Bigfoot or Sasquatch. And if you think about it, it has to happen exactly in that order. You're not going to get them protected without getting them recognized. Now we can say, discovery is not only happening; it's been happening for a long time. And people in our circles, we hear a lot more than the general public does about these things, but the discovery is happening quite frequently. Research is being done,
Yes.
and for that matter, knowledge data is being kept and tracked as far as location, time of year, altitude, moon phase, and all that stuff. So we're like right up against that whole recognition thing, and that's where it gets really difficult. And it's because the mainstream scientific community is very very conscious of their individual reputations. Their livelihood depends on it. You want to get that government job in wildlife. You want to get that teaching job in college, that professorship or whatnot. Are you going to risk that by stepping outside the box and even contemplating publicly that you believe these things exist? And there's a very small handful of scientists that have been willing to do that. What we're trying to do through a couple of different avenues, other than the Conservancy, we have affiliations with a couple of groups. One you may have heard of is called Project Zoo Book. It's run out of Ohio. Myself and several of our friends we kind of originated this, and this has been a pretty interesting experiment because some friends of mine, and it was really just happenstance, but they found out that there were some zoologists, more specifically primatologists, working in zoos, working with the primates that had a passing interest in Bigfoot. And they hooked up with a friend of mine, and they formed this bond, and they said, hey, we really need to compare notes. We need your science. You're curious. We can give you information on our end, as amateurish as it may be. We need you to apply your scientific background to see if we can't together come up with some answers. And so Project Zoo Book is alive and well, and we have agreed to keep the identities of these primatologists anonymous, which is only fair.
That's a good thing. Yeah.
There's another group that I helped found called wow, I'm going to have a mind. It's called SHARE. And same kind of concept. SHARE stands for Sasquatch Hunters Academic Research Exchange. And the idea, again, is to bridge that gap between amateur researchers and mainstream scientists in such a way that we can get things elevated to a point where they're going to really consider it. We can't honestly believe that true scientists, biologists, primatologists, what have you, anthropologists for that matter, are going to lower themselves to our amateur level. What we need to do is elevate the amateur to the scientific level. And to that end, we've been working on putting together, I think we're like 37, 38 different standard operating procedures that match SOPs in the scientific world. And then we also look at how they do their writings, how they put together their scientific papers. And again, we go back to that analogy of I could do a scientific paper that should go in a scientific journal about a frog or a butterfly or anything. I should be able to take the name Bigfoot out of there and plug it in. A whale, who cares? It's just, if we put it exactly in their format, and as outlandish as they might think this is, you're going to make them sit up and take notice. So we're working to elevate amateurs to professional level, at least in terms of the recording of their data. And so we're getting there. But I will say that I've been excited a little bit about a couple things that I've dug into and researched. There's a scientific body based out of Stockholm, Sweden, the IUCN, which is the IUCN, the International Union of Conservation of Nature. Mm-hmm. And this is the international body who's ultimately ended up with the authority to list animals as being existing or no more existing. So from discovery to extinction, we hear about endangered and threatened. Well, right. The IUCN has what they call the red list, and it's comprised actually of 9 different levels of life for any species. And threatened and endangered are just the 2 that we hear commonly. But there's endangered in captivity. There's endangered in the wild. There's, if you study extinction is not necessarily the death of the last of a species. You can have functional extinction with having a species that's down to less than 300.
Yeah.
What happens then is either they get dispersed, and then you have problems with reproduction, and those that don't disperse and they keep together, you have troubles with inbreeding, and that affects immune systems. And all of a sudden, that's what's taken out a lot of animals. Is just the numbers get whittled down so far that pretty soon you've got a very small number, all inbreeding and game over.
Yeah,
It might not
disease,
happen
everything
right
else.
away, but it really becomes inevitable at that point. So we don't want that to happen. We don't want that to happen.
Yeah. Oh no, not at all. And have you actually seen them with adolescents at all? Have you seen adolescents at all?
Not that I could say for certain. I think I've found evidence of that. I've heard some vocalizations that might seem very juvenile. I've seen tracks
Mhm.
that full size adult tracks intermixed with smaller
Small
tracks, and their
tracks.
tracks are very different than human.
Mhm.
In terms of the toes, for instance, don't taper like ours do. They're pretty almost square across.
Yeah.
The length, the ratios between length and width are way off from
Oh yeah. I think
human.
that's
So,
it.
Let me
well,
ask
I just mean in terms of ratio.
Right.
Not so much size, but you could tell an infant human foot compared to a. In fact, I've got one over here in my display case. One that's like 4 inches long.
Right.
It's small. It's got 5 toes. It sure don't look human to me.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. It looks that odd.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even when you see the larger ones, and
But now to answer your question, I have not physically seen male and now I may have seen a full-grown adult male and a couple adolescents back in '93. Being that one looked considerably taller than the other
taller.
two, but
Mhm.
these might have been, let's say, teenage age, I don't
Right.
know. I wasn't close enough to make out facial features or necessarily sex or anything, but
Yeah.
they could very well. I don't know why the other two would be, substantially
Yeah.
smaller, but I've not seen the, little guys, if you will.
Mhm. And what was the terrain like where you were at when you had that experience in '93? Because you're talking about explosives and everything else, and 3 of them showing up. I was just trying to figure out what that terrain might have looked
Have
like.
you ever been out to Oregon or Washington?
My sister lives in Oregon.
Okay, so what's interesting, let's see, I live here in the Mount Hood National Forest. I live in the Cascade Mountains. And that range starts at Mount Lassen in Northern California, goes through Shasta and all the way into Oregon and on up.
Mhm.
There's a dozen volcanoes just through the state of Oregon and on into Washington and actually right on into British Columbia. And that's an alpine forest. There's a whole different flora here.
Compared to,
Well, in comparison, if you will, where I was at, the Coast Range, which runs from Cape Mendocino, California, all the way through Oregon up into the Washington, the Olympic National Park in Washington, is where it terminates, is actually a temperate rainforest. And so there you have a lot thicker brush. You have like a triple canopy as opposed to a double canopy we have here.
right.
It's a lot tougher hunting, trust me. It's very,
Oh
very,
yeah.
very, very thick, very dense vegetation compared to here. And it's not, it's pretty dense here too, but compared to the Coast Range, yeah. So to answer your question, yeah, it's aside from these gravel quarries that the timber company that gave us express permission to use those quarries that day for those explosive training.
Mhm.
Outside of those quarries, you better be leaving breadcrumbs because you could get turned around real easy.
Really fast.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And I've been lost in there once.
Yeah. That's a terrible
Yeah.
feeling. It's amazing how many people who don't know what they're doing want to go off on a day hike or want to go Bigfooting and take a look and see what they are. But if you've ever had that experience in a wooded area that you get into and all of a sudden you have that idea of where am I, it is something that you don't want to have. And I've had
That's
that
a
experience
sick
before.
feeling, and
It is.
and it's really psychological because
It
the
is.
actual uh, admittance that you're lost, it's a state of mind,
Exactly.
because
It
there
puts
could
you in
be
a weird
somebody
spot.
there could be somebody standing right next to you that goes, "What are you talking about?" No, but when you get to that point, where in this particular time I was thinking of, the Coast Range is the first filter, if you will, for all that onshore ocean precipitation that comes in. And it's not unusual, and you don't have to be very high, a couple thousand feet above sea level, that you become part of that cloud. Literally, it may look like extremely thick fog, but anybody looking from a distance, you're in a cloud, dude. And when you try to find your way around for a half hour and then suddenly realize you're right back where you were. I mean, you realize the trees and the territory, and you go, oh crap, I just spent the last half hour going in circles. It's a scary thought. It's a scary thought.
Yeah, it is. Yes, it's very scary.
Yeah.
One other thing. What do you think about gifting? Have you ever seen that employed before?
Oh yeah.
Sometimes the natives say that.
Well, I got a different name for it. I like to call it baiting.
Yeah, well, that's what it is. Kind of,
but
yes.
but people have different takes on it. When I go out, I try to employ a lot of conventional hunting techniques, tactics, if you will, that I would for any animal. And baiting is one of them. It only makes sense. If we want to get a bear, especially a cougar around here, a mountain lion, bait's about the only way you're going to do it. Whether that bait is what you put out or you yourself. But
Yeah, there you go.
well, it's funny. There's a regulation. I swear to God, there's in the Oregon hunting synopsis. There's a law that says, or a regulation says, you are not. You used to be able to, but we can't bait bear here. We can't even bait deer for that matter. But the deer, the bear and the cougar especially are. That's really the only effective way to efficiently get one. But it says, and I wish I had it with me. I know I got one. It's probably out in my truck. But it says it is illegal to use bait in the field to attract bear or cougar during hunting season. However, it is permissible to apply scent to one's own person.
That sounds like a great idea.
Serious.
Really?
Go ahead and slather some bacon grease on, and
yeah, go out there.
But God help you if you put it on the ground, you'll get busted. But as long as you put it on yourself, it's good.
Yeah.
I've always found that funny, but
yeah.
No. So we employ a lot of conventional and some non-conventional techniques. So a lot of things, ideas that I and some other people have really kind of invented and we test on occasion. But I'm of a mindset that you don't find Bigfoot. Bigfoot finds you. And
that is the gift.
My point being that, let's say you spot a Bigfoot. You think you're going to race? Are you going to run it down?
Oh no.
You think they're going to stick around? You think they don't know the territory better than you? Before you know it, they're going to be on your six, and you didn't even see it coming. Yeah. But what I'm saying is, both the expedition I did in the year after my 93 sighting and the one I did in 98 with Peter Byrne and Ron Moorhead, I gave it a title of Operation Entice Contact. The second one, Entice Contact too. But the concept is that's if you believe the way I do that you can't chase these things down, then your next best course is to try to pique that curiosity that I talked about. When they came out and checked out our demolition, they're curious, they're smart, they're curious, they're intelligent. So give them a reason to come to you. And then Yeah, you can put some sensors out there. I've got, like I said, seismic ground sensors. I've got motion sensors. I have trail cams. I've got a number of different devices, night vision and color night vision is that, and a FLIR system, FLIR cameras that record thermal signatures. Have all those toys at hand, but during the day, for the most part, once you get all that stuff set up, just go about your day and act as if you could care less.
Right. And
But
that's
don't get out there and man these systems. You might get them set up your base camp, put these things out there, and then just leave them alone. And I think ideally, and one of phase 4 of the American Primate Conservancy's business plan, if you will, is to establish a 2 to 3 month long base camp in an area that had some recent activity. And I mean staying on site. You might have a vehicle that you might have to do some supply runs or whatnot, but you have your base camp stay there to where these things are they see hunters, they see weekend warriors go out there and hike and fish. They see hunters might stay out there a week, maybe even 2 weeks. But I think if you stay out there 1 or 2 months, there's going to be a point at which they're going to go, oh, I guess we have new neighbors and they're not going anywhere. So let's check them out. Let's say howdy, and give them reasons to come in. Some very innocuous things like taking a chemical light stick, hanging it on some fishing line and hang it out in a tree like a tree ornament. It glows at night. It makes no noise. It's a soft light. It's not threatening in any way. Who's to say they're not going to walk up and go, check it out?
Oh, yeah. What is that?
Give them some very subtle. One of the things I did, and you can call it gifting if you want, but in 98, just above our base camp, I found these 3 stumps that were separated by about 4 or 5 feet. And I took up, and I planned this intentionally from the beginning, is I took up 3 different types of bait. I took up red apples, yellow corn, and white potatoes.
Mm-hmm.
And then to correspond with that, I brought a red chemlight, a yellow chemlight, and a white chemlight. And then just before dark, I'd go up and I'd hang these little tubular wind chimes. They're little tiny things, but just enough to, if the wind catches them, they're going to make this little ting, 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 kind of a dinner bell.
Yeah.
Right. And then I'd crack these chem lights, and the concept, kind of like Pavlov's dog, if you recall that, is to make certain associations between sound and vision and smell and taste. And then if we get any, the idea is if we got any sort of reaction to that, then let's remove one element or the other and see if we can still get them in, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I won't say who, Les Stroud, stole that idea on a show after I had told him about it. Anyway, he like suddenly came up with this amazing idea for one of his TV shows, but we're not going to go there.
Yeah.
But
well,
anyway, we got to try. Nobody's got it right yet, right?
Right.
So,
and you're trying everything that you can try to be able to prove that these are existing. And I don't even know a photo, or I don't know what we're going to need to do it.
Let me ask you this: back to why haven't we found any bones? I personally think we have, but in some with other fields, when that evidence is presented,
no comment.
Somebody comes in and takes that evidence away. Kind of like bears,
giants,
skeletons.
Yeah, well, we looked at.
Well, you might be right, Billy.
I mean, I've heard stories of like with the forest fires.
Mm-hmm.
1,000 of acres burning, and the firefighters coming in and finding.
Mount St. Helens was another one.
Right, Mount St. Helens.
And somebody in black suit or whatever comes in and takes them away.
I'm not at liberty to go into a lot of detail, but I can tell you that what you're suggesting has happened,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
in probably in I hope in fairly short order, that question won't be asked anymore. Um, I've seen the evidence, and it's very, very convincing.
I think compelling.
So all I can say is I'm involved in terms of
I'm just saying.
I've been asked to be a consultant, if you will, on the subject, and
Excellent.
it's not going as fast as I'd like, but I am extremely grateful for being brought on as an advisor, and I think pretty soon, you probably heard it here first, but pretty soon your inquiry you'll find has already been.
I think I already know.
Yeah. Todd, my gosh, thank you for an excellent interview. We've enjoyed it so much. You just
I have too.
Speechless. And please, you are the founder of the American Primate Conservative with you and your wife.
Mm-hmm.
And can you tell us, give us a little idea how we can get a hold of Todd Neiss and give us all this stuff and what's happening in the future for you?
I appreciate you asking, and appreciate you having me on too. I've had fun too. It's a fascinating subject, and you guys have been excellent hosts, and I appreciate that. American Primate Conservancy has a website. I really need to update it, but it's at AmericanPrimate.org. O-R-G. Feel free to go there. It's a little outdated, and I'm planning to fix that. My personal email is certainly available. If anybody has anything to report or questions to ask, please don't hesitate. We treat any sort of reports very professionally and confidentially. So don't worry about that. I have a Facebook page also for the Conservancy. Just look up American Primate Conservancy on Facebook. There's some information there as well. As far as what I got in the future, well, other than doing some podcasts, I've been invited to speak in Idaho in early September at what's they call SquatchCon, which I thought was believe I didn't think of that first. But SquatchCon is coming up in Napa, Idaho. I'll be talking there. Before that, I'll be speaking at my own conference, what we call Beachfoot, and it's annual gathering, invitation only, researchers only, no media, no vendors. I call it a retreat, but it's this is our 14th year. I can't believe it, but it's a concept I came up with, and the only people invited there, and we cap it at 100 people, are researchers, and we've had them come from all over the world, from Australia, England, Russia, New Zealand. I've got a guy actually coming out from Papua New Guinea next week. I'm very excited to see him. He's actually been studying other cryptids in Papua New Guinea, namely the ropin, which is a living pterodactyl. So I'm looking forward to seeing Rex out here. I'll be speaking in Mena, Arkansas in September as well. At the Blue Zipline Farm, I think it is. They've done this for a couple of years. And then next May, I'm scheduled to speak in Ohio. So, and I've spoken there a number of times.
Yeah, over by Salt Fork there. Is that where you're heading?
Well, I've spoken at Salt Fork a number of times, and I've been there a few times just as a spectator, But I think this one is a little bit north of there, Cumberland. Am I saying that right?
Oh, there's a Cumberland up that way. I always look at
I maybe say, oh, no, Coshocton, excuse me. It's called Coshocton. Thank you.
Shashakton. Yes, the paper mill. It stinks.
Okay.
That's the one thing I remember about Shashakton.
Yeah, I've spoken Newcomerstown and Salt Fork several times, and I'll be going to this Chicago, whatever you call it.
Yeah.
Well, I don't speak Eastern U.S., but anyway, and who knows what might come up between now and then. I'll be going to the Medlin Falls conference here in a few days, just as a spectator, going to see my friends, speakers and whatnot, do a little socializing. And I have an opportunity to go on an expedition in mid-July into the mountains of Vancouver Island. We're working to arrange for a helicopter to take us from Campbell River up to a very, very remote mountaintop and drop 4 of us off for 2 weeks. But we're kind of waiting to see how the whole COVID-19 thing's going on, because right now the border's still shut down.
Right, exactly.
We're trying to make some sort of a back alley deal with the government, say we'll be self-quarantined for 2 weeks up in the mountains, so you don't have to worry about it. So we'll see what comes of that. But anyway, I could talk with you guys forever. You're awesome, and I appreciate you.
Thank you. Well, we're going to ask you. I hope we get to have you back again soon.
Oh, by all means, let's do it again.
We'll talk about it again, because it's such a great subject, and we're so interested in it because there is so much to learn about what's out there in the woods. And all of our lives we've always called them, in West Virginia, where they were called boogers.
Boogers, yeah. I've heard that before.
Yeah. So thank you again so much, and it's an honor to have you on the show. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, and let's do it again.
We will. We shall.
Love to.
All right.
Thank guys. You have a good night. Thanks again for having me.
Well, you're more than welcome. Thank you.
All right. Out here.
Bye. That was Todd Neiss, and it was a fantastic show. We really, we've got to have him back on, because he is so.
I'm a total fan.
Yeah, so am I. I mean, I just sat back and just listened. And
it's nice to talk. It's nice to talk to somebody who's seen what you have seen.
Right. Exactly.
I had the one experience, and that's all it took.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure. So, and thank you, chat room, for everybody being in here tonight. We do appreciate you coming on to the new forum.
Guys, hit the thumbs up, subscribe, help us get this new channel out.
Hit the bell, do whatever you need to do, and we will see you next week. And next week, we've got our good friend Chris Garcia, and he is going to do some readings online on air again. And so we'll be putting that out. So look for that. And we'll be here again at 6 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. Central time, and 9 p.m. Eastern time. So thank you again. Bless you all. And we'll see you next week.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.